And this demo is mainly to show how we integrate standard third-party security service or a VNF on our VeloCloud Edge, virtual ready edge device. So in the workflow, basically, it's basically like a three-step simple workflow that we follow, right? One is we automate the license validation of the firewall itself. And once the license of the firewall is automated, then we go ahead and configure and deploy the VNF onto the edge. And once the edge is booted up, it connects to its management server. In this case, I'm showing an example of Palo Alto Networks VM series VNF, which will connect to its central management server like a Panorama, and then download the final set of policies, firewall policies to the firewall. So that's the high-level workflow. And just to show you like a schematic of how the VNF is integrated into in the edge itself. So if you look at this, basically the firewall VNF will see the entire traffic that is coming from the branch side, both in and out of the branch. And then the firewall, we can optionally redirect traffic going to the firewall VNF, or we can send traffic directly to the SD-WAN modules of the edge. And once the traffic is filtered in the firewall VNF, then it gets forwarded to the SD-WAN module, and then accordingly it can be redirected either to the overlay or the underlay, or depending on the business policy that is defined on in our SD-WAN orchestrator. So let me switch over and go to the demo. All right. So in the first thing that I want to show you is like in the VNF that is going to be deployed within the on the edge. So how we do a simple service chaining of the traffic of the VNF itself. I'm on the wrong.
Here. This is the one.
No.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So let me show you like how you integrate this the service chain, the VNF, on the data plane of the VeloCloud Edge, right? So all you have to go is go to the specific edge device within the profile settings, and then select whatever LAN interface you want to redirect or insert the VNF into. So go to the this one, the interface configuration, and these interfaces have to be trusted. So once you, which is basically the LAN side interfaces, and say enable VNF insertion. So basically all the traffic that is coming in from the interface GE2 will be redirected into the VNF, right? So the same thing can be done for layer 2 VLANs or even sub interfaces that from the LAN side. So once you do that, then you can go to the edge level configuration. So basically you save the config, and then what's happening? No, just disable this one. So once you save the configuration, this config will be applied to all the edges that are within this particular profile, right? Now you can go to each edge and then go ahead and further configure the device itself on the VNF on the device, right? So if you go down, so here is the VNF configuration, In this case, we select from a drop down, we define what VNFs we want to deploy. So you choose one from the list. I will show you how the VNFs are defined in the network services page. But you choose one of them and then select the VNF and then select what license you want to apply. So these licenses have already been vetted, validated in the network services, which I will show you. And then you can select the appropriate license that needs to be applied for this particular VNF. And then in addition, since it is a Palo Alto VM series firewall, there are specific configurations that you can additionally, optionally add to the VNF, right? So at deployment time, you can configure the config template, which group it belongs to. And then next stage is the management of the VNF itself. You can say which VLAN the management interface belongs to, the management IP address, and the host name. And finally, when the VNF is built, how do you want to treat the VNF? Should it be powered up and inserted into the data plane, or just power it up and don't insert it into the data plane? Get the firewall policies and finally insert it, or just leave it powered off when you build the VNF on the edge. So these are the different options. Right?
Just a quick question. Do you only support Palo Alto or also other security vendors?
So we have others coming up in the pipeline. Okay. Like you'd see, a lot of the work we have done is more customized in nature, which means we have gone a step further, right? So because if you think from like service chaining perspective, yes, we can service chain, but we went a step further, and we also want to make sure the entire licensing workflow, bootstrapping of that VNF is all covered through in that whole process.
Okay.
So technically, there is no limitation, like you can put things in, but we are going case by case. So Palo Alto is first. We are coming up with checkpoint soon. So the well-known VNFs will all be supported on the device.
So actually, for you, it's more workflow question to integrate. It's not so hard to.
Yeah, like our philosophy is that we want to focus on ease, right? So as you see, what he's showing is that VNF insertion, everybody talks about it, but it's never really been practical to deploy it on tens of thousands of sites. And what we are seeing, there are two main cases. One is you want to get it down to a very low-end footprint. What happens is people sell this high-end servers and they say, oh, now deploy VNF and do service chaining. That's not feasible. So when we go to our SPs, they are telling us, hey, we have already deployed your box. Can you have these VNFs and service chaining enabled so that I can run only one VNF? Because 80% of the use case is security plus SD-WAN. So what we said is, yes, we'll do it, but we want to do it in a very elegant way. And we want to have a clean workflow so that it's usable by any person. Okay. So what Nitin is showing here is more around, okay, not only are we doing service chaining, we have thought through the entire workflow from day 0 to day n, how you will license it, deploy it, bootstrap it, and get it configured. That's the overall goal.
Makes sense, yeah.
So I have a quick question. Looking through as you're scrolling up and down, what's your IPv6 strategy?
Sorry?
What's your IPv6 strategy?
So we'll start with IPv6 on WAN this year. And then if we see, we're seeing the traction, but it's never been like on the LAN side, like, okay, it's burning need right now. But IPv6 on WAN is definitely going to be supported this year.
It'll never be a burning need on LAN. You'll just have to turn it on.
Yeah. We'll get there, yeah.
Sure thing.
The statistics prove it.
Yeah.
All right. So let me show you the other important workflow where we just spoke about for the automated license validation, right? So initially, when an administrator has to create this one, they define the VNF here, and the main important thing is the license itself. So we have like this automated validation of the license auth code itself, right? So you can configure an API key where the VeloCloud orchestrator contacts the Palo Alto license server using the API key and checks if this particular auth code is valid or not. Say if we test if the auth code is valid, it comes like active, right? Say if you give a wrong auth code and then you test it, it basically is invalid. So basically, this is the thing.
Nitin, can you just go to the monitoring?
Yeah. So from the in the monitoring section again, so we have the we can monitor the state of the VM and the VNF itself, right? So we can show, we monitor the CPU memory utilization of the VM, and there is another column here for the function that is running within the VNF. So if the VNF is running a firewall in this case, if it is running a UTM or it's running a antivirus or anything like that. So we probe using SNMP or the MIB that is specifically provided by by Palo Alto in this case, and then we give the status of the VNF in this status.
So that is another critical point of integration, right? So we also go a step further. So let's say in large enterprises, if you're in a HA kind of environment, it comes up a lot. Hey, somebody did service chaining, but now how do I support HA? Whether SD-WAN failed, VNF failed. So we are taking care of that. If the Palo Alto VNF fails, we actually use APIs and SNMP MIBs, and we walk through, we get the status, and we know when should we fail the SD-WAN as well. So it's like designed to be deployed. Let's put it this way, right? So it's a more deployment ready.
And so that virtual firewall instance, does that live on your VeloCloud hardware?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about resource constraints. I mean, what kind of hardware platform is there to support?
So that's an excellent question, because one thing unique that we have done is like I mentioned, we made it very practical for it to be deployed. When I say that, what it really means is we did a -1 VNF strategy, because if you take SD-WAN VNF and a and a firewall VNF, you need a lot more resources, and then again you are on a very expensive platform because you need a 2-core and a 2-core. So what we did is, okay, VeloCloud will run as a host, and then now you just need one VNF. So if you see from a CPU perspective, the CPU in a traditional service chaining, when you have multiple VNFs, you will actually go back on the hypervisor layer, come to the SD-WAN VNF, and then you'll have to do it twice, like that thing, like going back on that layer. In our case, you will save up a lot on CPU because it's always a -1, because we'll run as the host. So with, for instance, now it really depends. We'll give 2 cores that would be available for a VNF vendor on the very low end. So if you see like Fortinet probably needs like less than 1 core. They say it's 1 core or less. Palo Alto has come up with new flavors where they need 2 cores at minimum. So, and then with that enabled, the target is that it'll be at 100 Mbps throughput on the very low end with the firewall enabled.
And so your firewall policy in the Palo, for example, would that be managed via Panorama or
Yes,
whatever
correct.
your Palo management tools are? This would give you an option to really, without increasing your hardware footprint, push a lot of that security out to the edge.
Exactly.
And to steer traffic out
Yeah.
your local broadband or whatever DIA instead
Yes.
of having to backhaul it
Yes.
for security service.
Exactly. So it's eliminating truck rolls for people who want to have distributed security services. And then how do you simplify it, provision it, license it, and bootstrap it is the key.
Are there options to decide what traffic goes through the
Absolutely.
firewall? And
Yeah. So this is what he's showing was actually segment aware. So it is not only that you can decide which traffic, you can also say which interfaces, which VLAN in which segment should go through the VNF. Some customer might say, hey, you know what, I really don't want to, I want to send guest direct and offload, and I don't want to burn expensive CPU on Palo Alto to send that traffic through. So you can create a guest segment and say, I want to bypass the Palo Alto firewall in that case.
Okay. Or could you even say like,
Or you could redirect certain apps.
all my broadband traffic should go through the firewall,
Correct.
my
You could,
MPLS
yeah.
traffic just,
Yep. Yeah.
And save on Palo Alto licenses because
Yeah.
they ain't cheap.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're almost as expensive as an NSX license.
Yeah.
And
It's more easy on the guest network, no limitations. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead with the questions.
Okay. We touched a little bit on encryption and decryption. Are you, to put traffic through a Palo Alto, are you able to decrypt before it hits the Palo Alto?
Actually, it hits the Palo Alto first and then comes to the SD-WAN. because in a lower end branch, typically it'll hit the firewall first and then us. If you go in a more of a DC kind of scenario, it's the reverse.
Okay, so, if session's getting encrypted at a user's browser, then that means you can't see it. The Palo Alto will just see the packet headers. It's not going to see the traffic.
Yeah, so Palo Alto should work as is, like as it works today.
Okay.
It's literally LAN side first. So all the user traffic hits Palo Alto, and then it hits the SD-WAN VNF.
Okay.
So in theory, you could rely on the.
So it will not get
Right.
encrypted by us. Yeah.
So you could rely on the SSL decrypt if you were so inclined within the Palo Alto
Exactly.
to do all
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.